However, all traditional cultures have treated the sun as alive, and indeed the planets and the stars. Children, when they draw the sun, draw it with a smiley face. And so this in itself is taken as evidence against the fact that the sun can be alive or conscious, because if children see it that way, it shows it's a primitive, childish way of looking at things. And the fact that people all over the world show it that way until science comes along, again, proves it's primitive and superstitious. We've risen above it. I don't think we've risen above it at all. I think we've sunk below it to a level of dogmatism which simply closes off a whole area of questions for no reason other than the fact that a French philosopher in the 17th century chose to divide up the world in such a way that he defined matter as unconscious. It's become a habit of thought with us. About 10 years ago, with a few other people, I organized a small invitational conference in England. We held it over the the summer solstice in the countryside, called Is the Sun Conscious? We spent several days discussing the consciousness of the sun. Well, of course, none of us could really prove the sun was conscious, and you might say to me, well, if it's conscious, prove it. Well, my answer to that is, well, you can't prove it's unconscious. It's actually an open question. But once we got beyond discussing what it might mean, we then got on to the question of, if the sun does think, what does it think about? Well, one obvious thing would be its body, which is the solar system, right out to the heliopause. And it knows what's going on in the solar system. It's pervaded by the sun's electromagnetic field. Everything in this room is within the sun's electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic activity in your brain is within the sun's electromagnetic field. So the sun, in a sense, just through the electromagnetic field alone, would be able to sense what's going on in the entire solar system and beyond. And its decisions might involve, when to send out coronal mass ejections, whether the timing of solar flares, whether to point them towards the Earth or not. There's all sorts of things, and also the variable cycles of the sun may be reflections of its psychic activity. So part of its concern may be with its body. Part of it may also be with its peer group, the other stars. And the galaxy as a whole, you see, may have a mind. The entire galaxy is a living organism with a mind as well as a body. The electric universe aspect of this is the perfect interface between the physical activity of the galaxy and its possible mental life. Of course, if we start thinking and say, why stop at galaxies? You've got galactic clusters, and then you've got the entire universe. What if there's a cosmic mind? Well, this is by no means a new idea. But I think that science itself can open up something. We're not talking now about supernaturalism or blind faith. We're talking about a way of thinking about nature which gives us an organic, coherent view of nature and opens up completely new ways of forms of dialogue with spiritual and religious traditions. I want to end by just reflecting for a few moments on the location of our own minds. The normal view is the activity of the brain, it's inside the head. But this leaves a great many things unexplained, including vision. What's going on when you see something? What's going on when you see me now? Well, light moves from me through the electromagnetic field, enters the eyes, inverted images on the retinas, changes in the cone cells, impulses up the optic nerves, and changes in various regions of the brain, which can be illuminated through brain scanning. We know more about them than ever before. Does this explain vision? Well, no, it just describes changes in the brain. The first thing about vision that isn't explained is the fact you're conscious of what you see. That's an example of the hard problem in consciousness studies or philosophy of mind. The very existence of consciousness is unexplained. But then there's the question of where are the images you're seeing? You're seeing a three-dimensional colored world. The conventional view is that all that's inside your brain. You've got a virtual reality display somewhere inside your head, which includes me and the rest of this room and everybody else here. It's all in your head. If you look at the sky at night or in the day, the sky you're seeing is inside your head. A key paper recently in one of the consciousness journals by a philosopher of mind was called, "Is Your Skull Beyond the Sky?" And the author of the article answered yes. He's a materialist, so he said the mind's in the brain, everything you experience is inside your head, your skull's beyond the sky. This is only a virtual skull, but your real skull is beyond the sky. Everything you're experiencing is inside your head. Your whole conscious, subjective life is inside your head. I propose a much simpler view which takes into account our own direct experience. It's so simple it's hard to grasp. And that's that your image of things is in your mind, but not inside your head. Your image of me is exactly where it seems to me be, outside your head, where I'm standing. Vision's a two-way process. You project out images which coincide normally with what you're looking at. This means that there's a kind of outward movement of the mind. The mind's not confined to the inside of the head. It's extended out through attention and intention. And that means we should be able to affect things just by looking at them. And that means, for example, that if I look at you from behind and you don't know I'm there, you might be able to feel my gaze. Now, could that possibly be true? Well, as soon as you ask that question, you realize it's a common experience. More than 90% of people have experienced being stared at from behind. You turn around, there's someone looking at you, or staring at someone and making them turn around. There was an almost complete taboo on this in science until the 1980s. Because it simply doesn't, it ought not to happen. So skeptics dismissed it. It doesn't happen. It's an illusion. It's just folk belief, superstition. It's coincidence, selective memory. Experiments, however, show that it does seem to happen. There's now a lot of experimental evidence. People can really tell when they're being looked at from behind. It can't be explained just in terms of sounds or smells. It works through glass, works through one-way mirrors, even works through CCTV. Now, this means that our minds reach out to touch what we're looking at. And I just want to leave you with this thought as when we're talking about the extended mind. When we look at the stars, it means that our minds, from this point of view, are reaching out over literally astronomical distances, contacting those stars. Now, the question then arises, if the light takes, say, 10 light years to get from a star to our mind, when we project out our image of the star, is it just stretching out in time and reaching the star 10 light years after it was emitted? Or is our conscious mind working backwards in time and contacting it 10 light years in the past? I think it's contacting it when the light was emitted, 10 light years in the past. I think our minds are stretching out in time as well as space. And I think our conscious minds work backwards in time, as it were. This means that when we look at the universe, the electric universe, the stars, the planets, not only may we be looking at a living organism, the whole universe is a living organism with the galaxies and the solar systems within it as living organisms, but our minds are stretching out to contact it. It's not just something inside our heads, these ideas. When we look at the stars, directly or indirectly through telescopes, our minds are reaching out into the cosmos and maybe interacting with it in ways we can barely begin to imagine. Not just with potential little green men on other planets, but with the stars themselves, with the galaxy itself. So I think that the electric universe, which gives us an organic view of galaxies and solar systems as organisms held together by electric activities and plasma, is completely consistent with the emerging view of nature, the post-mechanistic view of nature, as the universe as a living organism, made up of many levels of organism within it, each organism containing smaller ones. The galaxies contain solar systems, they contain planets, ecosystems, species, social groups. Organisms contain organs, cells, molecules, crystals. A living universe with habits evolving in time, and one of which we're living parts. I think this is a view much more consistent with our experience of nature, a much healthier view of nature, one that breaks down that artificial division between mind and body, humans and nature, which the mechanistic theory gives us, and contacts us with the traditional wisdom of all traditional societies, which have all seen the universe as alive and organic. And I think we're rediscovering that at a higher turn of the spiral. I think as we move beyond the dogmas of materialism, science can be set free in almost every area, in medicine, in astronomy, in cosmology, in biology, in psychology, in chemistry, in our understanding of evolution. So I think instead of knowing almost everything, which is the common assumption, we know very little indeed. And the dogmatism we all encounter comes from a belief system, a worldview, which has long outlived its usefulness. It's long past its sell-by date. And as we move on from it, science will be set free in all sorts of ways, and I think we'll see a scientific renaissance. And I think this gathering is part of it. Thank you.